Welcome to Spotlight. I'm Rian Keating. Today we're delighted to welcome one of New York's most accomplished actresses, a woman who is best known for creating the role of Sheila in A Chorus Line, for which she received both a Drama Desk Award as well as a Tony Award. She's now survived 22 years in show business. It's a pleasure to welcome Kelly Bishop. Kelly, I must say this is a privilege.
Well, thank you. It's my honor.
You recently played Sheila for a few weeks in A Chorus Line.
Yes.
And how did that feel, having been away from it for so long?
It's extraordinary. It's like a trip down memory lane. There are a lot of times I'd stand on stage and have a flashback to even being downtown at the theater or at the Schubert or the Celebration. And, I mean, at the time while I'm doing the show, it feels very immediate. It's remarkable that it's been that long. You know, that whole thing started 10 years ago from the tape session. And that I'm still doing it, that I can hold, and I'm holding up and I can manage to do it. It's wonderful. It's very good, and the people are wonderful to me. Very nice cast, and I think they're a good cast too. So they treat me like someone very special, and I enjoy it.
Because so much time has passed since you first did it, and your career has certainly taken on a few new turns, do you feel there are any changes in your performance?
There probably are. I am one of the worst people as far as telling what my performance is about. Most actors make a terrible mistake of coming off stage saying, "Oh, I was so good tonight," and they weren't really very good. Or vice versa, come off saying, I just didn't have that moment," and people will say, no, you were so vulnerable, you were perfect. So I can't judge my performance. I really have to rely on other people to tell me. I think I probably am a little more mature or Sheila is, than it was, or she was before. I'm trying very hard not to do that, because the performance that was frozen, 8 years ago is the performance that should be given. But it's very hard not to add little things in or come up with new ideas, because that's an actor's job. I mean, that's what you do in a show. That's how you keep a show fresh, is to constantly work and clean up the performance, eliminate things that are unnecessary. So most of the time it was a matter of really trying to remember what I did. But it's very hard not to improve upon it or think, oh, what if she laughed here? No, she can't laugh here. No, she's serious here, or she's angry here. Or try to remember notes that Michael Bennett gave me. Even when we did the Celebration, the couple of notes that he gave me on things, I've tried to remember what he said, because I really haven't been directed in it. I had my choreography reminded me of my choreography by the dance captain, but no one really directed me into the show. So seems to be working. I just have to rely on the audience. And
when you're in a show for a long run, how do you continue to keep your performance fresh?
For me, it really is that the first thing that they always tell you in note sessions, and they're absolutely right, is that this is the first time the audience has seen the show, as far as you're concerned. And I'm very loyal to audiences. We need them. We need them desperately. And I have great respect for them, so I really do approach it as if no one's ever seen it before. And there's some kind of a magical thing that's very hard to explain that happens where you really do get involved in the moment. The moment is so immediate for you. If you're happy with your performance and if you've frozen it, you can go moment to moment on it. And that keeps it very fresh. And then the other thing, what I was just talking about, is sort of trimming off some of the excess as you go, realizing that you don't have to do quite as much as maybe you did, and you can keep it more simple, because I prefer simple performances and very clean performances. Then it's very obvious to the audience what you're trying to do. So that kind of work can go on and on and on and on. When I left Chorus Line initially, one of my feelings about that was, I'm done working on Sheila. Not that I had Sheila perfected, because I don't think that day can ever come, but that I got tired of working on it. And at that point, I don't know if it was Katharine Hepburn or Betty Davis, but it was one of those great ladies who said, when you get so that you don't want to go to the theater, get out of the job and let someone else go into that part, which is exactly what I did. Because I just got so that I thought, I don't want to keep working on this. I want to play another woman now. So I just, as I got more and more reluctant to go to the theater at night, I decided it was time to get out of the show and let any one of 500 people who are waiting in line to play Sheila. So that's
with a show like A Chorus Line, where you constantly have to be aware of the audience, how do you discipline yourself so you don't play it to the audience?
That was a unique experience for me, and it's altered my approach to theater since, because Michael Bennett told us 1,000 times, if he told us once, there is no audience in that theater. And there is no audience. that makes the reality very nice for the actor. However, of course, you have to be aware of the audience, because if there's a laugh, you can't continue to talk until the laughter's over. I just got so that I looked right across the top of the heads. We had our focus point, and at the Schubert Theater there's a little blue light. And the little blue light is the focus. So you just really concentrate on that. What I find now, though, when I'm doing a show, particularly a musical, it doesn't happen so much in plays, but in a musical you do a big dance number and you're wanting to sell to the house. And I have a tendency to have my eyes keep going up above to the back of the house and not getting down to the people because of that habit. It was hard. It was very hard to get used to, but now I'm almost more comfortable not seeing them. Not that I can see them very well anyway. I'm very nearsighted, so I just see little heads with little dots. I don't see faces.
Do you still have nerves when you go on before a show?
Yes.
Do you think with a show like A Chorus Line that can work to your advantage?
Oh, absolutely. It's all about an audition. And another note that we got a lot, and I'm sure that people get it now, is tension, tension. If there was one group note that was given almost every night, especially when we began, it was not enough tension on the line. Remember, you want this job. And yes, I mean, even when you're trying to act relaxed, as Sheila does, she's trying to be cool. But if you look at her, you know, she's got her hand on her hip. Well, she's grabbing onto her hip, and she's holding her head very still. But if you hit her, she'd be like a thing would fall over, because she's very tense, but trying to give the feeling that she's very on top of it. So yeah, that kind of thing. As long as nerves are a wonderful thing, and most actors have those kind of nerves before every performance. As long as it doesn't get in your way, you don't get into a panic. I think you need it, because otherwise you get very lazy on stage, and boy, an audience can feel that. They may not know that's what it is, but they can feel it, and they get just as lazy about applauding or reacting, and I don't blame them.
When A Chorus Line first opened, did you have any inkling that it would become the longest running show on Broadway?
No. As a matter of fact, when I got involved with it, I had done the tape sessions, and I had done the first little 5-week workshop. I was out on the road with a show, and I came back to do the workshop of Chorus Line, which became the rehearsals, which became the show. And my real motivation in doing that was as an acting project for myself, because I realized I'd been in an environment where there was no pressure, because there was no schedule, really. There was a tentative sort of 8 weeks at which time we would show it to Joseph Papp, and he would decide if he wanted to have us go on. And I thought, gee, that's great, 8 weeks of just really, to me it was as if I were going to go to acting class every day. Only get paid, sort of. We didn't get paid very much money. And have the freedom to just experiment and work on this character. And I honestly, from a very selfish acting point of view, I didn't care if it was a hit or not. I truly, when the show was really finished and we were downtown, I didn't think it would be as popular as it was. I thought it would be more controversial. That's
interesting, because Helen Hayes had said at the time of the gala that a lot of people in the business did not think that it would run, and
who knew?
That night she was eating humble pie.
Yeah, I honestly did. I didn't think that it would appeal to everybody, or as many people as it did. I kind of wanted it to be controversial, because that would be more fun. I mean, being a brave actress in something that a lot of people didn't like. But everybody liked it, so we just went on a roll. And I talked to Michael Bennett about it, and he'd say, it hasn't reached the peak yet. And I go, oh, come on, it's the most popular show in town. And then we moved to Broadway, and he said, it hasn't peaked yet. And I'd say, but look at it. I mean, every night we've got full houses, and then there were the two companies that they were rehearsing to the international company and the national company. And he'd say, it hasn't peaked yet. And I'd say, you got to be kidding me. Well, then, I mean, how many companies? I don't know how many companies there has been in Chorus Line. And I think they're going to start one in Austria now. It's been in Australia, it's been in Japan, it's been all over the world. It's amazing. He was right. It hadn't peaked at that point.
Why do you think it's been so successful?
I think that it's so human. Again, going back and doing it again, I've been able to analyze it from a different point of view and from an older point of view. There's nothing in that show that you're really missing. You talk about childhood, you talk about fears, you talk about hopes, you talk about even size. I mean, I had a friend come see the show at one point who was a little tiny person. And I hadn't thought of it until we were standing on stage and the 4'10", 4'10"
right.
came, and I thought, see, there's even something for short people. There is something in that show for everyone. And the fact that, this is something I hadn't realized until we were doing the show on Broadway, how many people wanted to be dancers. everybody wanted to be a dancer. Sheila makes a comment about everybody wanting to be a star. Well, that's true on some level. But how many people studied dancing or always wanted to study dancing? When people would come backstage after the performance and they would pour their hearts out to you about the tap dancing lessons they had or the modern dancing lessons they had or how they always wanted to have that. I had no idea so many people wanted to dance. So I think that has a lot to do with it too.
Mm-hmm. Coming back and doing the gala, how did that feel? Mm-hmm. How would you describe that evening?
Frank Rich came the closest. I thought he gave a brilliant review, if you could call it that, of that evening. It was absolutely magical, and I've had a lot of magical moments with Chorus Line, including the Tony, which I didn't think I would ever be topped. But on some level, well, yes, that was incredibly exciting, the Tony night. But the gala was exciting. I couldn't believe the number of people, and that was only I think that I don't know how many of those dancers. I think there were 350 there for the gala, but there were more that have done Chorus Line. And one thing I said to one of the other original members, I walked up on stage and there were a lot of people out in the house getting ready for this rehearsal, and I turned around and I said, look at how many jobs have come out of this show for dancers. Not just dancing jobs either, acting, singing jobs. It's remarkable. And that evening, it was extraordinary for the audience, for the actors, and we got to do it twice. Of course, the afternoon was almost even, that was supposed to be a dress rehearsal. It was almost even more extraordinary because it was the first time for everyone, on stage and in the audience, and we were all just bowled over by these waves of love. It was like we were saying we love you and they were saying we love you, and we just kept going back and forth. It was like playing volleyball or something. It was great. It was exciting and warm. Backstage there was no competition. If there was any, I didn't feel it. Only great cooperation between companies. People were very professional. One company would move off stage and make sure that they got out of the wings. No one had to say, everybody clear the wings. Everybody got out of there as soon as they could for the next company to move in. And it was a real testament to the professionalism of dancers. I was so proud of everybody. And it was just a thrilling moment.
When the show first opened, it seemed that every magazine or newspaper one opened, you would see somebody's face from a Chorus Line. Up until that time, your career, you had done a few acting roles, but this was the first one where you would receive major recognition. How did it change your perception of your career?
I don't know that it did, really. I had my little personal plan in my life, just getting from being a dancer to acting, which had happened a couple of years before Chorus Line started, was a major step for me. It's something I always wanted to do. It was very hard to convince people that you could, as another character in a Chorus Line says, you see there's something for everybody in that show, that you can talk to. And I would go to agent after agent, years before that, and talk to them about handling me, and they'd look at my credits and they'd say, but you just danced. And I'd say, but I did the lines in this and I understudied that, and they'd go, but you're a dancer. Well, finally, somehow I managed to work, by refusing to do chorus work. That's what I did. I finally decided one spring, it was during a Milliken show, and I don't know if people know what the Milliken show is, but it no longer exists. It's an industrial that Milliken Fabric Company did. And it was sort of the job of the industrials to do in the spring, mainly because you could double up. You could do your Broadway show at night and rehearse the Milliken show in the daytime. So you could make two salaries. And it was sort of the cream job. Only the best dancers got it. And I was standing on stage at Milliken one day, and I looked this way and I looked that way, and behind me and in front of me, and I was surrounded by other dancers, naturally. And I thought, I want to be on stage alone. I'm tired of being on stage with all these people. So the following spring, when they called me for Milliken, I very bravely said, well, thank you for calling me, but I'm not doing chorus work anymore. And amazing, when they called me 2 weeks later and said, would you like to come to a principal audition? I was overwhelmed. I thought it was going to take me at least a year to break into that. Well, I didn't get the audition for Milliken, but it gave me hope, and soon thereafter I was doing principal work.
Do you think that because you were a dancer and therefore used to expressing emotion through your body, that it was a natural progression to move on to acting?
A lot of dancers have. There's one thing that's unnatural for a dancer, which is the voice. Because especially ballet dancers, but all disciplined, well-trained dancers are used to not talking. Only asking questions, never giving any kind of attitude, including even being upset. I was thrown out of ballet class once because I started to cry. That wasn't allowed. You have to be very stoic and very obedient and disciplined, and that's it. So dancers aren't used to talking and expressing themselves. However, there have been a lot of dancers. When you look at Mary Tyler Moore and Shirley Maclaine, I was just reading an article about her. She still refers to herself as a dancer. There have been some brilliant actresses who were dancers. Lucille Ball was a dancer. I don't know that she was that well trained, but I know she worked as a chorus girl. Imogene Coca was a dancer. So it seems to be a natural progression anyway. I think that dancers are kind of free spirits. So that part of it is a natural progression into expression. It's kind of rare still, though. I mean, people see that dance credit and they think they used to always give the lines when you were in the chorus. They would give the lines to the singers. I think thinking because they spoke that they could deliver lines. And most of the time, the dancers, when they got the lines, were more inclined to be natural actors. I'm not putting singers down because there are a lot of singers who are good actors, but that was a real battle. I remember that being when there were a singer group and a dancer group, and the singers got all the auditions for the understudies and the five-line parts, and they would never give the dancers a chance to even do it.
You had started dancing at 7?
Yeah, little girl, doing it just very much like the Sheila story. My mother sort of primed me for dancing. You know, every time I picked up my foot when I was a little girl, she'd say, "Point your toe," and I'd point my toe and stand up straight, and take me to see all the ballets, and then, of course, said, "You have to wait." And I was raring to go. So she decided that she would teach me since she had some training. And she taught me for a year and decided that, well, she said that I had no more to teach you, but also I recall being a little bit of a brat in her class because it was my mother. So it was time to send me to someplace to really learn how to dance.
How did you adjust from going to your mother teaching you to someone else?
Oh, fine. I think I was probably obnoxious because it was my mother. And being a shy little girl, I mean, I was not shy around my mother, but around other people, of course, I was terrified and very quiet and worked very hard and fell right into it.
So you felt that dancing was a catharsis for expressing yourself?
Oh, I think so, yeah. I did other things as a child. I used to act in the basement a lot. I didn't have a mirror, so I used to light, and I used to look at I was sparring, I think. I'd look at my shadow on the wall, and that's how I would act. I used to sing musical comedies. We had a few albums down the basement. So, strangely enough, when you really think back, I thought of myself as being a dancer, but when I think about the playtime and the fantasy time, it probably really was more about being an actor. Plus playing horses. I had to play horses a lot when I was a child.
Well, as Sheila says, she dances because she wanted to get out of her house. And how supportive was your father, or was he?
Not at all. Not at all. He had no interest, really, in what either my brother or I did, which was kind of a shame. And because of that, he didn't want to pay for classes. So my mother, another thing that she had up her sleeve was being rather a good pianist. Actually, she had wanted, I think, her dream really had been to be a concert pianist. And so she was really quite a good piano player. So she started playing for my ballet classes in order to pay for the lessons. So she was around most of my growing up time in ballet class. My mother was sitting at the piano. I did get into a habit as I got a little older of hiding behind the piano because it was an upright, so that she wouldn't look at me, because whenever I'd look at her, she'd be saying, doing all these gestures, which she shouldn't have been doing. So I would sort of hide behind the piano and dance there.
How did your classmates and peers react to your dancing?
They didn't understand it. I did go through the Campfire Girls. I tried that for a while, and they made me a Job's daughter at one point. That lasted for another 6 months. I had a little trouble with that. I'd get a little good girlfriend or something, but then she'd want to do something after school, and after school I had to go to ballet class, which was perfectly natural for me and something I wanted to do, but my classmates had a little trouble understanding that. Consequently, I had a very limited social life, especially as I got older. I never went to a school hop, one of those 4:30 school hops. I never went to one of those. Didn't go to a prom, didn't do any of those things, because I really didn't make friends in that way. I'd have a girlfriend or a couple of girlfriends, but when it came to the social part, I'm not saying I was completely eliminated from my life. I went to a few pajama parties, but most of my friendships really came out of dance school. You'd get to be girlfriends with the people that you'd play with at dance school. So They didn't understand, no.
You had said in an interview that one of the best moments of your childhood was standing on the top of a mountain with your dog.
Oh, yes, yes. We used to go fishing. I'm from Colorado. And my mother, my mother's just going to sound so wonderful in this. She's a wonderful fly fisherman. And she used to teach my brother to fly fish. Well, I tried to fish a little bit, but I had so much trouble putting the poor little worm on the hook. I mean, it broke my heart. I couldn't make myself do it. And then, of course, you get the fish out and have to kill it right away, and that bothered me too. So I had a tendency to go wandering when they were fishing. And growing up in Colorado, they're very careful about telling you how to walk in forests and make, so that you don't get lost in forests, and what poison ivy looks like, and to stay away from rocks where snakes might be. So I didn't wander too far. I was careful about my wandering, but I would go for walks with my dog. And at one point, I remember finding myself on a very steep slope, very high, because I remember looking across the valley and I could see the tree line. So I was very high in the mountains, and there was a little tiny, tiny brook, just enough to hear the little tinkling of the water coming down and little wildflowers. And it was so quiet and so beautiful that I remember having this fulfilling experience, this awestruck sort of thing, and that's when I knew there was God. There was something very special here, and it's a moment that I go back to in my mind when I'm seeking peace, because I still have the picture of it. I'll never forget the panorama of where I was standing. It was just, well, I went to the mountains a lot. We did when I was a child. And Colorado has beautiful, beautiful mountains. So, but that is one place I'll never forget it, because something hit me at that point. And I knew there was something more than all of the other things around me.
Your parents had been divorced when you were 14. How did that change your self-esteem? Did it affect
I had trouble with the divorce. I thought when I was growing up that I remember one of my earliest recollections of standing there looking at my mother and looking at my father, and they were arguing with each other and thinking, well, why are they together? I don't understand why these two people spend time together. I didn't understand anything about divorce. So I was thinking all the time as I was growing up, gee, it'd be really swell if just Mom and my brother and me were together and we didn't have to worry about Daddy. And when the divorce finally came, I remember my mother came to me and she said, I've made a decision. And I could always second guess her on her decisions. And I said, you're going to get a divorce? She said, yes. And I said, good, I think it's wonderful. But then it was devastating for me. It really was. I don't know why, but it happens to most kids. I mean, the tension in the marriage is terrible for the children, and then when that tension is relieved, then they have this tremendous sense of loss, which I went through too. My grades suffered. We did move at that point. We moved from Denver to Northern California. So I think that for the first time in my life, having a completely different lifestyle was traumatic for me. But it was the best thing, and boy, it changed my mother.
What sort of changes did she go through?
She was amazing. I've never seen, to this day, anyone go through a transformation like she did. She's a little woman. And I remember thinking of her as a gray mouse. This little gray mouse and this big man. My father's very tall. And she seemed to try to fight back, but she was scared too. She was almost, I think one of the reasons we were so close is because she was almost like a little girl, and then of course I very soon was the same height she was. So we were more like girlfriends. When she made that decision to put her little foot down, as it were, and leave my father, she got pretty. She started to dress very nicely. Not that she hadn't dressed well, but she didn't think about it. I think her self-esteem, and I think that's really where it came from. I mean, she turned into a completely different person. Very, very attractive woman, and funny and outgoing. I mean, she'd been so introverted before, because I think of pain and because of fear. It was remarkable, and it's something that I'll always remember too, because when he